Okay, so we all think we know the show Friends, right? I mean, we've probably seen every episode a dozen times. But what if I told you we're going to look at it through a totally different and honestly a really powerful new lens today?
Think about this for a second. What if just one little detail about one of the main characters was changed? Not just a small thing, but something so fundamental that it could completely reshape their personality, their relationships, and, the entire heart of the show we love.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about a world where Fat Monica wasn't just a flashback gag. Imagine a version of Friends where Monica never lost the weight. A reality where she's a plus-size character for all 10 seasons. Now, you might think, okay, that's just a physical change. But trust me, it would have altered everything.
But, before we can really dive into that what if, we have to get a handle on the character we actually got, the one in the show. So let's break down the Monica we all know and love. Let's call her Canon Monica and figure out what really made her tick.
Okay, so Monica's entire personality is basically built on these deep-seated insecurities, right? She spent her whole life being overshadowed by her brother Ross. She was always desperate for her parents' approval, especially from her mom, who's just constantly critical. So her weight, it wasn't just about weight. It became this physical symbol for all that pain and insecurity.
And all of that insecurity, it forced her to develop what we call a coping mechanism. I mean, it's basically a strategy our brains use to handle all that emotional stuff, and a lot of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. For Monica, think about it, her crazy competitiveness, her obsession with cleaning and order, those weren't just funny personality quirks for the show. They were her way of coping.
And this right here is the absolute key to understanding her. Her decision to lose weight, it wasn't really about looking better. It was about control. In a life where she felt totally out of control and constantly criticized, her body was the one thing she felt she could control. It was her way of trying to prove to everyone, and maybe to herself, that she was worthy.
Okay, so what if that big moment of gaining control never happened? What if she never lost the weight? Let's start with the first big ripple effect, how it would have completely changed her personality and her entire career as a chef.
Yeah, you can see these two paths just splitting right here. On one side, you have Canon Monica. She's driven by that need for control, which makes her super assertive, a risk taker, and boom, she becomes a head chef. But on the other path, an alternate Monica, who's still carrying all that self-doubt. She'd probably be way more hesitant, afraid to take risks. In a crazy competitive field like cooking, she might have just second-guessed herself out of a career instead of fighting for it.
And a change that big inside someone, it's not going to stay inside, it's going to spill out and affect everything around her. And that brings us to maybe the biggest what-if of all. How it would have completely reshaped the show's biggest romance. We're talking Monica, Chandler, and a whole lot of doubt. But to even imagine how their story would change, we've got to take a step back and remember when this show was made. We're talking the 90s. And on TV back then, plus-size characters were pretty much always written one way, struggling. It was all about rejection or low self-esteem, or they were just the funny sidekick. It was a really common and honestly a really limiting way to tell stories.
So given that context, their love story would have probably looked really different. I mean, sure, it might have started the same way, with both of them being a little guarded, but that deep, unresolved insecurity in Monica, that would have been a major crack in the foundation. Can you imagine? Her constantly questioning if Chandler really loved her for her? Instead of that solid, amazing relationship we got, it probably would have been something way more fragile, way more tense.
All right, let's zoom out, because this isn't just about Monica, or even Monica and Chandler. When you really think about it, this whole thought experiment points to a genuinely revolutionary missed opportunity. One that could have changed the entire legacy of Friends and its place in TV history.
Just think about Monica's job in the group. She was the glue, right? The one who hosted everything, organized everyone. Her apartment was literally the heart of the show. But to be that person, you need confidence. You need the confidence to take up that emotional space. A Monica who's still drowning in insecurity, she might have just faded into the background, and that would have changed the entire dynamic of the friend group.
And that's where we get to the really powerful idea here. Friends had the chance to be completely groundbreaking. I mean, just imagine it. A confident, successful, and totally beloved plus-size lead character on one of the biggest sitcoms of the 90s? That would have been huge. It could have challenged all the traditional beauty standards and given us a role model whose value had nothing to do with changing her body. But that's not what happened. Instead, the writers took what you could call a narrative shortcut.
Her weight loss was just an easy, visual way to show the audience, hey, look, she's grown as a person. But in doing that, they sent a really subtle but really powerful message, didn't they? That kind of confidence, that kind of growth, well, it only happens after you change your body.
And that leaves us with this one last, pretty big question to think about. How much of who you are is shaped by what's inside you? And how much of it is shaped by how the world treats you, based on what it sees? Monica's story, both the one we got and the one we've imagined here, is a heck of a reminder that the deepest, most important growth isn't always something you can see on the outside. Thanks for exploring this with me.